Excellent. So I think we're good to make a start around about now. So good morning and welcome to today's webinar on cyber resilience, not just cybersecurity, delivered in partnership between NCVO and one of our trusted suppliers, Zurich Insurance. My name's Nick and I'm the Networks Manager here at NCVO, and it's great to see so many of you joining us online this morning. This is the fourth and final webinar with Zurich in our 21-22 calendar before we launch our 2022-23 Zurich Webinar series later this summer. And before I hand over to our guest speaker, Aaron, you'll have noticed that closed captions or subtitles have been enabled, and you can turn these on or off by clicking on the CC icon in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Everyone joining us today is in view only mode, which means that your cameras and your microphones are switched off, so do sit back and relax. You can comment and reflect on the things that you hear today in the chat box, and it's here in the chat that you can also post your questions that I'll put to Aaron in the Q&A in the last 10 minutes of today's session. Finally, today's webinar is being recorded and will be hosted on the NCVO YouTube channel within a couple of weeks. And in just a moment, a PDF of today's slides will be shared in the chat. They'll also be circulated in a follow-up email after the event. So without any further delay, I'm pleased to hand over to the Senior Cyber Risk Consultant from Zurich, Aaron Banerjee.
Thank you, Nick. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me, Nick?
I can hear you, good.
Perfect. Yeah, I was asking everyone hear me or not, but I realize everyone is on mute. Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining. As Nick said, I'm Aaron Banerjee. I'm a senior cyber risk consultant with Zurich Resilience Solutions. That's part of Zurich Insurance. So quickly about me, I work with the cyber underwriters to help them better understand cyber risk when they are pricing a risk transfer. That is one part of my role. Another part of my role is to work with clients who are providing them cyber risk and resilience consultancy and advisory services. And yeah, in total, I have around 14, 15 years of experience working for different sectors. That includes insurance, consultancy, and NHS. Before joining Zurich, I was the cybersecurity manager for NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. Thank you. So today's agenda. So we're going to talk about cyber resilience. So we will start with cyber threat landscape. Then we will go into the very important thing of like, what are the senior management consideration? I'm sure a lot of you are not wearing a cyber hat on. You are like more from senior management. So that's why I will quickly talk about what are your considerations before moving into how can you develop a cyber risk management strategy? How can you develop a strategy? We'll talk about risk treatment. What are the key things which, according to me, you should apply, key controls to apply. Then we will go into talk about cyber resilience. And finally, we will have a question, answer, and discussion, if you can. So the cyber threat landscape. So what are the different things that we are seeing in the market? So if I look into the stats, which comes out of DCMS, Department of Culture, Media and Sports, this report comes out every year, Cybersecurity Breach Survey 2021. 2022 still has not been released, but it will be released soon. So I'm using the one in 2021. Okay. So you can see the percentage of organizations that has identified breaches or have been attacked in the last 12 months. Overall businesses is 39%, whereas charities is 26%. So almost 1 in 4 charities reported some kind of a cyber attack or a breach. Okay. So what are the keys, different types of breaches or attack which was identified in that time period? Definitely by far you can see from the stats, going back to the same breach report, phishing attack is number 1. By far, phishing attack is the biggest threat vector when it comes to cyber attacks. Okay, human being, and they are targeted with phishing attacks. We'll talk more about phishing, and I will even talk about how can you develop like a cyber strategy for phishing attacks. So that brings us to the first questions. Okay, why are we being targeted? What is the main reason why we are being targeted? Definitely, one of the main reasons is financial. So at the end of the day, cyber criminals are after your financial data. So they want to get, not financial money. But another very important thing is sensitive data. A lot of you work with government, work with local NHS, your organization collects a lot of sensitive informations, PII. So those data, they are sensitive and they are valuable. As a matter of fact, I have a stat from where it says that right now, we approximately have like maybe 100 zettabytes of data. 1 zettabyte is 1 billion terabyte. By 2025, it will go to 175. And in 2035, it will go to approximately 2142. That's a lot of data. And also you can see how the volume of data is increasing. That's definitely bound to happen because we are sharing almost everything on web. Everything has a log. Everything has, we are collecting more and more data. As we go more digital, we are collecting more data. So, and also we have connected everything to internet, from our toasters to the blinds to lights, our house, everything is connected. And all this is producing data. And if these data can be interpreted, they become information about you, information about me. Those are valuable. And cyber criminals are after that. Then it comes to intellectual property. A lot of organizations, even charities, have intellectual property. So they can be a target by another charity. And that brings me to the first one, the last one, which is the ideology conflict, where you can have a conflict of ideology with a lot of organization, a lot of people. They might also target you. These can be hacktivists. Also, I forgot to mention about one thing, since we were talking about sensitive data. This in the Economics magazine in 2017 came up with this cover page which says world's most valuable resource. So in 2017, according to the Economics magazine, it's no more oil, it became data. So organizations like Google, Facebook, Tesla, and other companies who have all your data, they are becoming much more powerful, much more expensive than those oil companies. So yeah, data is right now the most valuable resources for us. So these are the main reason why you are being targeted: financial reason, sensitive data, intellectual property, ideology conflict. So the next one, who is targeting us? Who are the threat actors? So the number one is online criminals. So these are like hackers, sometimes low-skill hackers. They are mostly targeting you with phishing attacks. So they are spraying all this phishing, dropping you hundreds of emails every day, and they're expecting you to click on the email and pay them certain amount of money. Like these are emails which you get, like DVLA owes you £40 or the HMRC owes you £346, those kind of emails. Those are like online criminal. Then you have the hackers. These can be sometime following the nation state strategies. They can be sometime the good one who have the high skills. These are the hackers who are having like targeted malware attacks. Then you definitely have the malicious insider. These can be disgruntled employees who are not happy with what you are doing, not happy with how they are being treated in the organization, and they can misuse their rights, they can misuse their access, and there are lots of examples where these kind of thing has happened. Then you definitely have the hacktivist. It goes back to ideology conflict. Someone doesn't like what you are doing and they target your website. There, I will talk about a few examples in the next slide where Facebook pages were hacked and the logo were changed. A lot of things were done like that. But the final one, which is perhaps the biggest one, is honest mistakes. Okay, where someone by mistake has clicked on something or someone has by mistake has sent something out. So these are the main threat actors for you to consider. Let's talk about the cyber threat horizon. So what are the main threats for your sectors? So definitely the first one is data breach, privacy breach. Since you have so much of sensitive data, you are definitely considering the threat of privacy breach. And that has happened to so many organizations. It doesn't have to be with a malicious intent. It can also be for that honest mistake. Someone has emailed sensitive information outside your organization without a proper reason. That can happen. Supply chain cyber attack. Supply chain cyber attack is nothing new, but especially in the last 2 years, it has increased quite a lot, or it has managed to grab the headline. So we had attacks like the Log4j, SolarWinds, and even things like the Black Ball attack, where I'm sure a lot of charities in UK, universities, charities, they were impacted by the Black Ball kind ransomware attack. The next one is business email compromise and social engineering. Okay, it goes back to that phishing type of attack which I was talking about. Business email compromise, where there are a lot of organizations whose business emails are getting compromised, and most of the time, cyber criminals are using social engineering techniques. Okay, as a matter of fact, I don't know how many of you are aware of deepfakes. That is one emerging threat for every organization to consider. And this is where your video can be manipulated and anyone can pretend as you. And this is becoming so easy. You have free apps in your iPhone these days where you can put your face on any video. Things like you can become like any character or your favorite character in Game of Thrones. You can do that. Again, it's so easy and it is free, it's cheap. According to World Economic Forum, the number of deepfake videos online are increasing at a rate of 900%. So going forward, what will happen? You won't be able to trust the video. You won't be able to trust the video which you are seeing today. Like if you see me, now you know me. Going forward, if you see my video, you might think that that's not the person. So that's one emerging threat everyone has to consider. The next one is remote infrastructure. This is an area of concentration risk which we have created post-pandemic. Because post-pandemic, we have moved so quickly to working remotely. Okay, and we are using a lot of products where a lot of organizations are using similar products. So if there is one vulnerability of one product, so I'm using the example out here like critical risk to unpatch Fortinet VPN devices. So a lot of organizations are using Fortinet, Pulse. There are so many of these kind of systems which are getting used. So if there is one vulnerability in Fortinet, in Pulse, why I'm naming them, because these had vulnerabilities found out in the last 2 years. They can be targeted. And once they are targeted, a lot of organizations can be impacted at the same time. Okay. As a matter of fact, Diligent finds out that cybersecurity due to work from home has cost UK businesses 374 million in the last 18 months. That's like January 2022. So the post-pandemic, while we work from home, that's the cost that we have, the UK businesses have paid. Fake websites. I was talking about that ideology conflict where if you are doing a lot of, if someone doesn't like what you are doing, especially since you're in the charity space, they might target you. So the Jewish charity was targeted by hackers, where I think they changed their Facebook logo or something like that was changed. But by far, the biggest threat for any organization doesn't have to be a charity. Any organization is ransomware attack. And what is the biggest change in ransomware attack? Post-pandemic, ransomware attack is coming hand in hand with data breach, where cyber criminals, before applying ransomware or encryption into your system, they are first exfiltrating your data, then they're applying the ransomware. So it's basically a double-edged sword. If you recover things from your backup, you will have a data breach because they will release your data to those leak sites. So that's by far is the biggest threat for any organization. As a matter of fact, ransomware, so this is not for charity, this is overall for any business. You can see that's how the ransomware payments have increased. Okay, so from 2019 to 2020, this is the total cryptocurrency value received by the ransomware addresses. So ransomware addresses are the Bitcoin addresses where monies are paid. These are cyber criminals addresses. That is the increase which has happened. So I talk about the threats, the threat landscape, who are after you. Now let's talk about how do we tackle this? How do we tackle this whole threat landscape? And a big role, a very big role is played by the senior management. So when it comes to senior management, the first thing to understand is cyber is not an IT function. The biggest mistake which organizations can do is keep cyber siloed within IT. That's that IT guy's or girl's job. Okay, cyber risk management has to be part of organization's risk management, your enterprise risk management. Okay, cyber has to be part of that. And as a senior manager, you have to definitely consider cyber when you are thinking about business changes. You have to think about preparedness, how prepared you are to deal with cyber incident. You have to think about suppliers and partners, because no organization can actually work by themselves. You are dependent on suppliers and partners. So you have to definitely consider them as a senior management. Along with that, you have to consider what is your risk appetite. Okay, especially when it comes to cyber attack. Okay, you have to consider all possible scenario. Definitely do risk assessment, cyber risk assessment, not just the fact that my corporate risk register has cyber risk. Okay, you have to break down that, understand what is that cyber risk and how are you managing that cyber risk. Okay, and then have proper assurance for that. These are the senior managers' responsibility to make sure these are done. Defining that risk appetite, having that risk assessment, and then having a proper risk assurance. And all this will definitely impact your culture, because the culture is the main thing for any organization. How that impacts everyone. There will be people who won't be tech savvy. Everyone is going through digitalization. So you have to consider what cyber risk the digitalization journey is bringing to your business, and definitely how that's impacting the culture of your organization. So those kind are the main senior management consideration which you have to do, the risk part. Since I talk about risk, let's look into how can you develop a risk management strategy? So there are loads of ways. Okay, so when I was thinking like, how will I articulate this part? I was thinking about keeping it generic. But then I thought like, no, let's talk about one example. That's why I have used the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. I don't know whether you are aware of this or not. This is basically a strategy framework. This is not a tool which you can buy. This is a strategy framework which says the steps or the stages the advisory takes to attack an organization. So basically, these are the stages from reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, command and control, action and objective. So these are the different stages which a cyber criminal takes to basically exploit your system. So if they go to action on objective, that's a game over for you. Okay. And what you need to do is, if you are using the Lockheed Martin, this is actually a very good strategy, the framework to use. Okay. You have to think, how are you stopping cyber criminals at every stage? What controls you have in place to stop the reconnaissance? Okay, now, if they have managed to break that reconnaissance barrier, what controls you have in place to stop the weaponization? Then if they manage to break, what controls you have to stop the delivery? And eventually, what controls you have to stop the action and objective? Okay, if I take a small example of phishing, so this I have taken from the NCSC's website. Okay, no reason to reinvent the wheel, because this is brilliant. They have simplified that kind of a idea, and they have created like 4 layers. So what NCSC is saying, this is basically a strategy of how to defend your organization against phishing. Okay, so what they are saying is the first step is make it difficult for attackers to reach the users. That's the first step. So what are you doing to stop the users, to stop the cyber criminals, or make it difficult for the cyber criminals to reach the users? So implement things like anti-spoofing controls. Consider what information is available to cyber criminals. What are you putting on your websites? What are you sharing on your websites? Think before you share. Do you actually need to share those information? Okay, I always talk about, like, whenever you are using social media, make sure the privacy of the social media is configured correctly. Otherwise, if you go to a holiday and give a photo, okay, and it's open to everyone, open to public, anyone gets to know you are not at home. Because if you are on holiday, that also means you are not at home. Okay, so what you are sharing, Then filter and block incoming phishing email. That is also a very important thing. So block that. Now, if you consider that layer will be broken, that layer will be breached. Okay. So then the next layer is help user identify and report suspected phishing emails. So obviously, if you have 100 cyber attacks, which is coming to layer 1, maybe 20% of them will be filtered in by your controls in layer 1. So now in your layer 2, you are thinking about only 80%. Okay, so what are the controls you will have for like layer 2? How will you help users identify and report suspected phishing emails? Provide them training, help them recognize what is a phishing. What are the key things to look for in a phishing email? So have those controls. Then say, for example, that layer blocks another 50%. So you are still left with 40% of the emails, okay, which are malicious. Next one is protect your organizations from the effect of undetected phishing emails. So these emails, these 40%, they are not detected by your end user. Now what will you have to protect from those 40%? So protect having like multi-factor authentications, using proxy server, up-to-date browser, anti-malware, those kind of things will protect. But still, there will be few which will manage to break that layer. So that's why the fourth layer is how will you respond quickly to incident. So now that's 1 or 2 email which have gone into your inbox. They have been clicked. Your malware, anti-malware hasn't managed to detect that. So you have a cyber attack. So how will you react to that? So you can think like that. Okay. Again, this is one way of developing a strategy. It doesn't have to be the only way. Okay. So that's one way to kind of think about how you will deal with phishing attacks. I get these questions quite often like, oh, we are doing cyber awareness for phishing. Okay, that's not enough. By doing just cyber awareness is not enough. It has to be a good mix of people, process, and technology. The 3 things needs to be there. You need to have the right amount of people awareness, right amount of process, and good technical controls. So talking about technical controls or controls, what are the cyber risk treatments? What are the main treatment? So this is again not an exhaustive list, but I have created a list of key controls which according to me are important for your particular sector. The first one is minimum cyber or information security risk governance. Have some governance, have a policy, cyber policy, and make sure that policy is regularly updated. It is approved by senior management. That's a start. Unless you have a policy, then how are you protecting your organization? Protecting to what standard? That policy defines what you will do. So having that policy, having that governance standard for cyber, it's the key. Okay, that's the first and very important thing to do. The second one is identify and apply regular backup of critical asset. These goes back to identifying your critical asset. If you are a small, mid-sized charity, you won't have a lot of assets to identify which one is your critical one, which one is not critical. But as you go bigger, because there can be some huge charities, you have like, these are my crown jewels. These are second most important. These are third most important. How do you do that? That goes back to business impact assessment. So you carry out business impact assessment, you understand what is the impact of that particular system going down into your business. Okay. And once you have identified that, make sure that all your important system or your key systems, the crown jewels is definitely backed up. If possible, offline backup. Okay. Offline immutable backup. Okay. I don't want to go much technical, but I will just say like why offline? Because if cyber criminal manages to compromise your main system with ransomware, they might laterally escalate to your backup if it is connected to your primary. servers, and they might also compromise that. If it is offline, that travel route is broken. They cannot laterally escalate because it is offline. So preferably have offline backup, but definitely backup, regular backup. That's the key. Even NCS, if you go and read NCS's recommendations, most of it is already talked about by NCSC. Next one, secure identity and access management. I'm sure every organization, like even everyone who is out here, you are going more and more towards digitalization, cloud migration. I'm sure everyone is talking about cloud. Remember, when you go to cloud, these are like, what is cloud? At the end of the day, someone else who is hosting your servers. Previously, it was getting hosted by your own organization. Someone else is hosting your server and you are accessing that. They are providing you a feature. Sometimes, depending upon your agreement with them, they are managing it. They are providing all the security features and everything. But it is hosted over the internet. Okay. Unless it's a private cloud. So, but normally the cloud which we all talk about is like it's hosted over the internet. It's no more within your secure perimeter, your fortified, your castle. Previously, we always talk about securing the castle. It's no more within the castle where you have a massive wall, the firewalls, and every perimeter controls which we used to have. So what has happened is in today's world, our identity has become the new firewall for us. Our identity is the key, because all someone needs is our username and password, and someone can break into that cloud environment if they have the right access. So that's why secure that identity. What do I mean by secure? Have things like multi-factor authentication. That's key. If possible, enable multi-factor authentication for everything. Everything should have a multi-factor authentication. So that's securing the identity. Always think about privileged accesses. Privileged access, cyber criminals are mostly after privileged accesses. So what are privileged access? These are the additional access which some people have, like IT admins. It can be some people who have extra access to data. Their accounts are mainly targeted. Why? Because their account will give cyber criminals access to the crown jewels. So secure them, have extra layer of security for them. And always think whether you need to have access to everything. Like what we call a role-based access or principle of least user privilege. If you don't need access, don't have access. So if you have data, if you are a CEO of an organization, or if you are a CFO of a charity, do you need access to all the data? If the answer is no, don't have access. Okay, because then your account becomes much vulnerable, because everyone will be after your after your account. So identity and access management is perhaps the most important in today's world, especially with the more and more digitalization and cloud migration which we are doing. Moving on, the next one is develop phishing mitigation strategy. I talked about phishing mitigation strategy. So develop a proper phishing mitigation strategy, which is not just user awareness. Phishing mitigation strategy is not just about, I have told all my users what to do. That is, so develop a proper phishing mitigation strategy. The next one is, I was talking about identity and access and cloud management, but remember, we still have on-prem system. We still have a lot of things which are hosted in-house. So still it's good to have that firewall to protect us, our organization's assets, okay? Have up-to-date softwares, anti-malware protections. This is protecting the organization's assets which we have. Patching is key, because what does patching mean? All the vulnerabilities which are identified, they are being filled up. So those gaps are being filled up. That's patching. So the Log4j, the SolarWinds, and all the major vulnerabilities which were highlighted, the solution for them was apply those patches. Because whatever system we are using, they are millions and millions of lines of codes which someone has written, and they are bound to have some flaws, some weakness, some errors in them. And these are vulnerabilities which are exploited by cyber criminals. So remember the WannaCry attack in 2017? I had first-hand experience of dealing with WannaCry. The WannaCry, the vulnerability which was targeted was called Eternal Blue. So that was a weakness in Microsoft environment, and that information was targeted in the old systems, Windows 7, Windows XP. Okay, so that's why if there is a patch available, there is no reason not to patch the system. Apply patches as soon as possible. Test, apply, test, apply. Okay, that's the key. The next one is having anti-malware protection. Have anti-malware protection, which can do signature-based detection, behavior-based detection. Have those protections in place. The next one is secure mobile devices. Why secure mobile devices? Because every organization nowadays use iPhone, tablets, laptops. We have moved away from the whole desktop environment. Previous days, remember, like I used to have a desk, a desktop. I used to go and sit from there. And I don't think anyone nowadays work in that kind of a model. So if your devices is traveling with you, is moving with you, you should have a way of managing it. So that can get lost. So you should have a mode of wiping out remotely. One good example is remotely wiping out the device. That is very, very more. You should have the ability. Even if you don't need like specialist tool for it. I think if even Apple's like native Apple allows you to wipe out a device, but I think it's called theft mode or stolen mode. There are a lot of these modes which you can enable, but make sure you have those features enabled. Make sure you can track them, remotely wipe them, because if you lose a device, and especially if it is not encrypted, sensitive information might fall in the wrong hand. That is a cyber breach. That is a data breach, and which is under the Data Protection Act 2018. ICO will be after you for that. Okay, the next one is review cyber risks posted by suppliers and partners. As I was saying, I don't think there is any even a single organizations who can work by themselves. You are reliant on other organizations to provide you information, provide you services, and those, they are bringing in risk for your organization. So they need to be reviewed. Okay, and why this is becoming a key weakness? Because if I go back to the DCMA Cybersecurity Breach Survey 2020, sorry, that will be 2021, not 2022, but that's my mistake. Okay, in total, 8% of charities have reviewed cyber risk posted by their suppliers and partners. That's 8%. Okay, so that's quite low. So almost 92% of the charities haven't even done any kind of risk assessment of what will happen if my key system is down, or if I'm working with this local organizations and they are down, how will it impact my organization? Okay, so that kind of risk, understanding the risk and having the right control in place, that is important for them. And finally, don't just think about security, think about resilience. That's the key topic of this presentation, resilience. Okay, so what is the difference between cyber security and cyber resilience? So if there can be different school of thought on this, but my school of thought is very simple. It says that cyber security is just about defending your organization. Okay, but cyber resilience considers the fact your first line of defense might fail. And then how will you react to it? That is cyber resilience, according to. So cyber security is all the controls which I was talking about in the last slide. I was talking about have the patching in place, user awareness in place, malware in place, identity and access management in place. That's cyber security. But cyber resilience considers that all these will fail, and then what will you do? So if you want to measure cyber resilience, the easy way to measure will be like the probability of an attack, because what is a risk? It is probability multiplied by the impact. If your probability is 1, it's a sure event. What is the impact and how will you manage the impact? That's how you can sort of measure cyber resilience or how resilient you are. So what is resilience? You have to think about technology, process, and people across all this thing. There are 3 different kinds of control: tech, process, and people. So the first one is identify risk. Identify cyber risk for major project, for your organization, major changes. Identify risk. What are the risks? Then you should definitely define your risk appetite and find out what is the residual risk. Think about what defensive protection, what cyber security you have in place. Those defensive protection, the anti-malwares, the patching, and all those things. Apply those things. Those are important. Nowadays, protection in itself is not enough. You need to think about detection. Having things in place which will proactively detect and respond to an incident before it actually happens. Those detection abilities are key for any organization. Even 4 or 5 years back, we used to say like SIM, SOC, those are for the big boys. But slowly it's becoming, the idea is changing. It's no more for the big boys. Okay, it's for everyone. Managed SIM, managed SOC, those are the solution. And then with the detection, having the response capability. As I said, cyber resilience is you consider that today or tomorrow you will be attacked. When you get attacked, how do you respond to it? And this is not for cyber, not only for cyber. We think in the same way for fire risk. Why do we do those fire drills and everything when we go to office? The reason is we are getting prepared. If something happens, how we will respond. So if we have done fire drill, why don't we do cyber drills? What is the good reason for not doing it? Especially as we work more and more remotely, our threat horizon has increased. So that's why that response, doing those drills, having those response plan and regularly doing drills, everyone from the CEO to the new graduate, everyone needs to join that drill and needs to carry out the drill, understand their role. Like in those fire marshals, there needs to be people who will deal with cyber incident. That's response. So once you have responded to an incident, along with that, what you need to do disaster recovery and business continuity. That's how you are minimizing the impact. So you have an attack. So you have been compromised, nothing you can do. Now what you can do, the best thing to do is minimizing the impact of that attack by doing what? Disaster recovery. That's not just backup. Disaster recovery is bigger than backup. Having the disaster recovery plan, having that business continuity plan in place. You need to do that. So what I always say, if you have a cyber attack, you need 3 things. One is incident response plan. How will you react to the incident? Your fire brigade, basically. How will you deal with that? While you are dealing with that, how will you recover your things? So that's disaster recovery. How will you go to your backup, bring back all the system? And while you are doing these 2, your business needs to continue. You just cannot give a pause to the business. If you have the luxury of that's fine, but normally businesses needs to continue. So what needs to run parallelly is business continuity plan. That is running your business in contingency mode. If you have all these 3 things, then only you are resilient. So now you have a cyber attack. You have managed to recover from the cyber attack. What do? You go for lesson learned. You definitely should do a lesson learned, a major impact, major incident review, understand what we have, what we faced, why it happened, where was the weakness, how can we improve? Once you have understood that, it goes back to risk identification, because it might change your risk appetite. It might change the risk which has been identified, your residual risk. So this is a circle. it needs to it is not a linear one, it is a circular one where all this information feeds into your risk identification again. So that is basically sort of like cyber resilience according to me. So if you have cyber security, you are kind of stopping at that defensive protection, perhaps detection. That's where security stops. But if you have to go towards resilience, in today's world, resilience is the most important. You have to continue with the other part of the journey. Okay, so this is an article which me and Thomas is our senior underwriter. He's a team lead right now. Okay, so, and we wrote this where we say like resilience before cyber insurance. Because cyber insurance, the pickup of cyber insurance is increasing quite a lot these days. More and more organizations is going for, every sector is going for cyber insurance. But what's happening, a lot of organizations, even before becoming cyber resilient, they are not good with your cyber control. They are saying like, oh, my strategy is to go and have a cyber insurance. That is actually making the market hard. That is the reason the market is, the cyber insurance market is becoming hard. Because if you don't have the good controls in place, the cyber resilience in place, you are not sort of insurable. So go and read this article. I will share the link. Otherwise, just Google the title and you will get it. And final thing which I will say, my final slide, get certified. Okay. It is always good to do things like Cyber Essential Plus, UK government backed certification. So I will heavily encourage to go and get Cyber Essential at least, if not Cyber Essential Plus. This is very good, not only for you, but also every organizations or every client you are dealing with, everyone who is working with your charity. They get to know that they take cyber seriously. Okay, so definitely go for Cyber Essential. Last year, I did a session on Cyber Essential. I think it's still available in YouTube. Go and if you need it, go and see about what is Cyber Essential and what are the different things for Cyber Essential. So I would heavily encourage that. Yeah, thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Excellent, Aaron. Thank you so much for that. And that was going to be incredibly informative, quite scary, I think. There's a lot there to kind of think about and take forward. We did have a few questions that came through from the chat. So there was one participant who said that as a board member, I would like to have an example of a framework for board assurance on this subject. So could you suggest any frameworks for cyber risk management?
Depends upon your size of the organization. Okay, so there are loads of framework in the market which you can use. NIST, a big framework. NCSC CAF, a big framework. But if you are a small mid-size of charity, that will be too much for you. I would say, again, depending upon your size, I don't know the size of your organization. I normally say like NCSC top 10. NCSC top 10, like try to achieve NCSC top 10, like do everything which NCSC is asking you to do in their top 10. Okay, that's the first one. Okay, if you have achieved that, make sure you go towards maybe ISO 27001. Okay, and if you have achieved that, you can target NIST, NIST, or NCSC CAF. You can target them. So depending upon your size.
Brilliant. And then we had kind of quite a few kind of questions going to come in when you were kind of talking about phishing. So kind of the first three kind of like quick fire ones. How do you stop phishing emails? What are the key features of a phishing email? And how do you respond if you receive them? Is it enough to just delete them? So the first question, how do you stop phishing emails if you can?
Well, how do you stop phishing email? I was talking about that. Like again, like how do you stop a cyber attack? How do you stop? There are three things, a good balance of three things: people, process, and technology. Educate your people, tell them what is a phishing email. If Barclays or HSBC drops you an email from HSBC .Mickey Mouse. Okay, that's definitely wrong. Barclays or HSBC. Your banks will never do like that. Or anything, your insurance company will drop you an email from Google gmail.com. Okay, those are obvious signs. And then obvious signs of phishing to spot are things like something which is too obvious. Okay, something which is like, the Nigerian king has died. Remember those emails we used to get, the Nigerian king, and someone said, if you just say that you are his grandson, you get £1 million, something like that. Those are too obvious, okay, to understand. Pizza Hut is giving 99% discount or 90% discount. Even they are doing business. They cannot give 100% discount, okay. So understanding those things are the key, okay, like what are the obvious signs of phishing? I will again say NCSC's website is brilliant, okay, honestly brilliant. There are loads of videos, loads of articles to read about phishing. So I will highly encourage, go to NCSC's website and see what they are talking about phishing. They have a whole section on phishing. Okay. What was the next one, Nick?
I suppose you've kind of covered the kind of key features about kind of like the email addresses that comes out, that they come from, and things are just kind of too good to be true. But then if you receive those kind of phishing emails into your inbox, how do you respond? Is it enough just to kind of hit delete and then forget about them?
No. So remember, if you hit delete, that's it. The problem is gone at that point of time. Okay. But you haven't gone to the root of it and sort of like stopped it from happening in future. So say, for example, that's why we encourage people to report a phishing. Because if you have got one phishing attack, which is talking about something, your organization, anything, okay. And if someone hasn't clicked on it, has spotted it, they need to report it so that it can be taken out of other mailboxes, because you don't know, someone might not spot it and click on it. So that's why, if you think from an organization's perspective, you need to encourage people to report those phishing. Because if you report it, then only it can be taken away from the others' inboxes. Because you have to definitely consider there will be someone Monday morning, not having a good day, didn't have the morning coffee, clicked on it. Okay. So that's why just deleting it is not enough. Like, report, and then your technical team, your IT team needs to have the ability to like run a complete sweep of all the environment, removing that email. Okay. Or if you are using any reputation-based detection engine, it might be that detection engine failed to detect that particular phishing email. So you need to feed that information back into your detection engine that you have missed it. So going forward, if similar email comes, make sure you catch it.
And I suppose just on that, for some organizations that are kind of quite small or that are kind of volunteer led, that might not have a kind of IT department or someone can lead in kind of the IT area, is there a kind of essential place that they can report phishing emails to?
See, if you are if you are 20 member, okay, and there needs to be someone who is coordinating this. Okay. So if the policy is, if I spot something, I will forward the email to that someone, and then someone tells the other 19 or 18 that this kind of email have been spotted, make sure you don't click on it. So see, I can say, like, if you don't have the money to apply technology, have the process in place, which can be sort of a counter control, because I am not advocating any technology out here. Okay, because I always say people, process, and technology. These three things needs to be in place to have a better security.
Great. And then we've had a couple of kind of comments coming through that for some organizations, they outsource kind of to their IT provision to external providers who kind of manage their IT security and firewalls and things like that. How do they kind of include them in these processes, and what should their expectations of these kind of third parties be?
The first question is, do they also manage the cyber risk for you? They manage the cyber controls for you, and you manage your own cyber risk. So you identify the risk. It can be they are doing the identification for you, but you own the risk. When you do any risk assessment, there needs to be an owner of the risk. So do you own that risk, or do you do the supplier own the risk? Okay. So that's why from identifying what risk that supplier is bringing to your environment to that a particular supplier is providing you IT support, that can be your Active Directory management, that can be your key system management, that's fine. They are providing you support, they are providing you functionalities, but you are the owner of your risk. The accountability still lies with you to make sure your organization is safe. How you do it is with the help of them. So if you ask for example, I was talking about incident response. Develop incident response scenario and bring your suppliers to run the scenario with you. Okay, you can do like that. I run a lot of incident response for our clients, and where I encourage like, oh, your crown jewel, your key system, it is managed by XYZ. Why don't you bring a couple of XYZ people in the round table, and we will see how well prepared they are to react. So yeah, involve them in every stage of cyber risk management.
Excellent. And then someone's kind of just asking the question whether or not an application like Mimecast can help and filter out the majority of cyber attacks through email.
I won't comment about any particular product. Okay, so see, every product is good. Every product is good in their own sense, but every product has some features which are better than others. But obviously, you cannot have all the products under the sun. That's not a cost-effective solution. That I have 10 different email filters. So that's why you need to understand which products works best for you. Okay, they are providing XYZ feature, and those are the features I'm looking for. Going back to your risk assessment. Okay, maybe they are providing DDoS mitigation. Just example, some company. Okay. And DDoS is not a big risk for you, say for example. So why go for a product which is great with DDoS, not with something else? So that's how you select. Okay, what is the main risk for you? And does the product ticks all the boxes? And then there are loads of companies like Gartners and others, they comes up with magic quadrant. So you can see and compare their features, but I'm not going to comment on any particular product.
That's fine. That's totally understandable. And then we kind of had another kind of question that's had a couple of supportive kind of follow-on comments. So kind of for small charities with no expertise whatsoever in this area, is this something that they can do themselves, or do they need to bring in a consultant with experience?
Ooh, difficult question. Depending upon like how small you are, but it would be good if you can to bring in some external consultant to kickstart the journey. They might steer you towards the right direction, and they might tell you how to navigate, and then you will be on your own throughout the journey. Okay, because I can understand external consultant cost money, time, resources. I can completely understand that. But if you can, it will be good to have someone to help you with understanding how to do cyber risk management. Like the first question, very important question, which framework? Okay, someone told me NIST. It's a great framework, honestly, great framework. But if you're a 20-member organization, if you're following a NIST framework, that's an overkill. Okay, so understanding what works for you, that I will say. Or I have seen recently like a lot of organizations, like not only charities, colleges, schools, they are going more for the like a virtual CISO model, where they're going for like one CISO is being shared with a lot of organizations. So there are loads of things you can do.
Great. And then I think maybe the last question for you, Aaron, this morning is how do you kind of mitigate the risks of honest mistakes by users?
That's the most difficult one. That's the most difficult one. But again, if you're thinking about strategy, think about people. What are the, so again, go back to people, process, and technology. People, how will you educate users of like what is right, what is wrong? It goes back to your acceptable use policy. So first thing is define acceptable use policy. Okay, what is acceptable by the business? So a good example is, say for example, you work in a health sector environment, or you work with sensitive information, patient sensitive information. They are considered special category data by ICO. So if you are sending that email with special category data, that email needs to be encrypted if it is sent outside. So how do you know about it? It goes back to what I was saying, have a policy. Your policy should say that you need to encrypt that, and then tell that to every user. Make sure users are aware of it. That is your awareness. Telling user what are the different type of malwares won't get you anything. Okay. What you need to educate users is what is acceptable, what is not acceptable for your business. It is acceptable. You have to encrypt an email in this way when you send an email outside. If you are sending an email with sensitive information, you need to make sure these things are done. Acceptable use policy, educate the user. That's user part. Then have the process part. So say, for example, honest mistake. One of the biggest honest mistake is someone being asked to send money. Okay, if you Google, you will see so many organizations, they had these fake emails where it says, oh, I am your supplier. So might be a name which they know. We have changed bank account. Please send the money to the new bank account. Okay. And someone made a mistake. A junior employee made a mistake. So for that, have a process. Say, for example, depends upon your appetite, risk appetite. Any transaction over £1,000 needs to have more than one layer of approval. That's a process which will stop honest mistake. Okay. And then have technology which will kind of complement these two. So you can have data loss prevention technology, DLP, and all those technologies in place, which will stop someone from accidentally sending information outside. Okay. So by having the three things together, you can only stop honest mistake.
Excellent. That seems a great point to end the Q&A session. So thank you for responding to all those questions, Aaron. If we could just move on to the final slide of today's webinar. Before we go, I just want to take the opportunity to highlight the NCVO know-how website, which is our knowledge bank of tools, resources, guidance, and templates. Here you will find a whole host of information related to data protection and cybersecurity, including the 5 steps to cybersecurity that every group needs, which talks you through backing up your data and protecting your charity from malware, to a section taking you beyond the basics of cybersecurity, taking you through a more detailed approach to cyber risk management that will complement much of what Aaron has spoken about today. Of course, Zurich Insurance are one of our trusted suppliers, and you can find out more about the services and support that they offer the voluntary sector on our trusted supplier pages. Finally, we have a very short evaluation form, a link to which I've just kind of posted into the chat, and it'd be great to get your feedback on today's webinar and your suggestions on which risk topics our 22-23 webinar series should focus on. So all that's left to say is a huge thank you to Aaron for his time and his expertise today. It's all been incredibly useful. And thank you to all of you for joining us on this webinar this morning. We look forward to seeing you again soon, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.